Hello, this will be part 4 in the robot rigging tutorial series. Last video we talked about how to set up the skeletal joints and skin the geometry to the joints. So now we're ready to actually set up the movement or the availability so that this robot can move. And this is called setting up the controls for the character. So we're going to start with this video discussing the inverse kinematics or the IK controls. So some of the motions that the robot is going to need will require just simple rotation of the joints. Things like the spine, the arms, the neck, the head, and the fingers will just need to simply rotate. But other parts need to have forces applied against them or animate in a very specific way. So some things like the legs will need to step, jump, push off of the ground and other surfaces in order to walk and perform specific actions. And other things such as the antenna need to move more than one joint at one time in a fluid way. So what we're going to do is set up what's called inverse kinematics. Forward kinematics are things like what the arms, neck, and torso will do. They'll individually rotate each body part. That's called forward kinematics. And inverse kinematics is where we have a force applied against a series of joints, more than one joint. So an IK for short is what we're going to create for some of the major areas of the body like the legs and the antenna. We're going to make sure we're in the rigging module, and underneath skeleton there's a create IK handle. I'm going to go to the box beside it because we need to change one thing, and let me make sure I hit reset to show you the default. So in the IK handle tool settings, we're going to make sure the feet and the legs start off with a rotate plane solver. So that means we're going to skip one joint. The other option is single chain. We're going to come back to that here in a little bit. Make sure the current solver is rotate plane. I'm going to turn on sticky. That means the control is not going to move unless we move it. So we can move other body parts and it'll stick the control in place until we want to move it. So sticky, rotate plane. Alright, so we're going to select the hip with one leg, and then I'm going to move down to underneath the knee and click on the ankle. Okay. Now, in order for this to work properly, from the front view, the hip, the knee, and the ankle need to be completely aligned in the front view. Like in the x-axis, they need to have the same exact x-axis attribute, which for me is 0, actually. So that needs to be completely aligned in the front view. From the side view, we need to have a forward bend in the knee. The knee needs to be in front of the hip and the ankle. If you do that when you're creating the IK handle, the IK should not bend or twist the leg around. If the leg bends or twists around as you create the IK handle, then we don't have the correct alignment in those two angles. You need to go back, re-correct the alignment, and then recreate the IK. Okay, so here's the IK. It's kind of hard to see, but with it selected, we see a line from the hip to the ankle. There is an orange circle around the hip. There is a white triangle facing forward, the direction of the knee. And if you look at it from a wireframe standpoint, there is a crosshair where the ankle is. So this is called an end effector. And basically when I have the IK selected, if I look down at my outliner, let's go ahead and rename that. So we'll say IK left leg. There you go. And when I click that IK and move that around, that entire leg moves with it. So this is good for walking, stepping, pushing off of things. If I come in here and move the pelvis, that IK stays put, whereas the right leg does not have an IK and it moves with the pelvis. So that's getting to be where we want the legs to move. We still got some other refinement. So let's go back to the IK tool with the same settings and create one on the right leg. Let's select the hip, skip over the knee, click on the ankle. Okay, we're going to call this one IK right leg. So now each leg has an IK that keeps that ankle flat unless I come in here and move that IK. So I could pick the leg up, and then with the pelvis selected, move that. You see how the leg kind of stays put there. Move this back down. Okay, that works pretty well, but what it doesn't do is actually the feet, the toes, and the ankles actually rotate. So we're going to create a secondary set of IKs that are going to correct and adjust this. So I'm going to go back to my IK tool. Whenever we're testing, make sure you undo to get back to the bind pose. So let's make sure we're in the bind pose here. Yep, looks pretty good. And I'm going to get my IK tool. These second set of IKs for each leg are going to be a single chain IK. So I'm going to change the current solver to single chain. And that's it. I'm going to keep sticky on. But these second sets are 2 more IKs per leg. This is going to allow that foot to stay put and create proper stepping. So I'm going to create the IK with a single chain. I'm going to click on the ankle, and it popped a little. So what that means is probably I didn't undo all the way back to the original positions. Okay, so let's try that again. Back with the rotate plane. Go, and then we'll change this to single chain. There you go. And then we'll do a single chain down here. So sometimes if you don't undo back to the bind pose, it changes the tilt of the character, which can mess up the way the IKs are created. So these secondary ones are single chain IKs. So I'm going to go back and rename these. This is my leg one, IK left leg. Okay. And then I'll go back and do the other IK for the leg later. But so the first one's the rotate plane IK from the hip to the ankle, and then I have 2 more. So this one's from the ankle to the base of the toe. So let's say IK left. I like to call this one ball, the ball joint of the foot. And then this last one's IK left toe. Okay, there you go. All right, so now we're going to recreate the IKs on the other leg. The first one is a rotate plane, stickies on. Select the hip, skip over to the ankle, and then the second 2 are going to be single chain IKs. So we'll do ankle to the ball of the foot, and the last one's going to be the ball to the toe. Okay, so let's rename. So the top one is IK right leg, IK right ball, and the third one IK right toe. So I have 3 IKs per leg. What that means is when I click and select on all 3 IKs in the outliner, and I move all 3 at the same time, now I have like toe point, I have toe pushing off, and if I move the pelvis now, the feet stay in place. So unless I straighten up the leg completely, then it'll kind of pull them away while still keeping the feet pointing at these IKs. So that's the IKs for the leg. I have 3 IKs per leg. The one from the hip to the ankle is a rotate plane. The other 2 from the ankle to the ball, and then the third one from the ball to the toe are single chain IK, and they have sticky turned on for all of those. Each leg has 3, so that's a total of 6 IKs. All right, the last thing we're going to create is a different kind of IK for the antenna. So I want this antenna to really come in here, and let me go and select my joints for the antenna. Oops, start with the base and we'll work my way to the end. I want this antenna to kind of swing around in all axes, so I can spin it around as much as I want there. So that's kind of what I want these joints to do. Well, I can manually do this with all these joints, but that would take some time to select everything. So we're going to create what's called an IK spline handle here. An IK spline will take a curve and use that curve to drive the motion of an IK in inverse kinematic for this antenna. So I can't use the basic create IK handle because the IK handle only should skip 1 or 2 joints. And the other constraint with that is that it's only going to bend in one axis. So there's no way for me to, with this IK from my leg, bend that leg backwards. I wouldn't want to do that naturally anyway. But for an antenna, I want to rotate this in all directions and angles. So I'm going to use an IK spline handle. I'm going to go to skeleton, create IK spline handle. I got the box beside it. And I'm going to play around with this. The tool, I'm going to leave everything on there except for I'm going to change the number of spans to 4, and we'll see how that works. And then I'm going to do twist type, ease in and ease out. So we'll try that first and see what that looks like. So number of spans of 4, twist type, ease in and out. Alright, so then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my IK spline handle and click on the base joint for my antenna, skip down and click on the end joint. Now it's going to create a IK handle similar to how the basic IK handle works, but I can't actually move it. There's no way for me to move that. It's based off of a curve. So also with those joints, it creates a curve with those joints. See if I can find that. Antenna, there's the effector, there's the curve. So here's my IK curve. I'll rename that IK curve. If I go to show none and then show NURBS curves, there's the curve. If I turn on my joints as well, it puts the curve right on top of those joints. So what I'm going to do is to show curve. What I need to do is create a control for this curve so that I can drive the motion of the IK. Let's go down and rename that IK. So we'll do IK antenna. But I can't actually do anything with that IK. I have to create a locator control that drives the motion of the IK and drives the motion of the curve. So with the curve selected, I'm going to make sure show none and then show NURBS curve. So I just see the curve. I'm going to right click on that curve and go curve point. And then I'm going to click and drag to the top, the end of that antenna. It's going to create a red dot that when you let go, it's going to change to a yellow dot. And what I'm going to do is go to deform point on curve. Deform point on curve. Okay. So now if I go to show locators, that's going to create this green locator at the end of the antenna. So if I turn everything else back on, show all, I need to go to modify center pivot because the pivot point for that locator is at the base of the grid. So we're going to go to modify center pivot. So now what I can actually do is let's rename this locator. So let's do capital L for locator. We'll say antenna control. Here we go. Is with this locator, I can click and move that locator and actually can deform the points here. Now what is just not proper is that the way we have adjusted that curve from the basis. So we're actually going to go back and recreate the IK with some different settings so that way it gives me more opportunity to move this. Now this would work. All I would have to do with this method is go to show none and then show curves again, and I would create more control points. So I would create one in the middle, which this could be a way to do this as well. Go back to deform point on curve, go back to show all, that creates another locator there, and modify center pivot point again. So that will allow me to kind of bend the middle of the antenna. So really I have an end antenna and I have a middle antenna. Okay. So I can keep doing that. I can go back to my curve. Let's go show none, show curve. Let's go to curve point and drag it maybe a third of the way down. And we'll do it again. Deform point on curve. We'll do show all. With that third locator selected, we're going to do modify center pivot. And that gives me yet another point to rotate and adjust my curve. So it's much more smoother of a curve. So that is one way to do this. But maybe I just want one control here. Okay. So if you'd like to have less controls, we can come in here. I'm just going to delete the IKs and those locators I just created. And I'm going to go delete the curve. Okay. I'm going to get back to my curve or IK spline tool, and we're going to recreate it. So I'll go to the box beside this or double click on my IK spline handle. So if I go to skeleton, IK spline, and let's change this back to the default. So let's do reset, and let's see what it looks like with just number of spans 1, twist type linear. So if I want multiple controls on this curve IK, then I would do number of spans 4 and twist type ease in and ease out. But if I just want to have one control at the end, I can leave it all as default, reset, so that spans as 1, twist type linear, and we'll try this now. So let's create the IK spline from the base to the end. Okay, there's my curve. We'll rename this IK curve. We'll go back and do show none, show curve. We'll right click on the curve and go to curve point, drag that point to the end of the antenna. deform point on curve. And then we're going to turn everything back on. So there's my locator. Let's do modify center pivot. Let's go rename everything. IK antenna. And this is locator antenna. So now when I click and move this locator, it bends and twists the entire antenna. Okay, so it also goes in all axes and all angles as well. Here we go. So with the IK spline, if you want to have multiple controls, more individual areas that can be adjusted, then number spans to 4, twist type to ease it and ease out. If you want to have just one control at the end, then just have one span and twist type to linear. So that way that creates one locator control that can bend and twist this IK and the antenna all the way around. So that'll wrap up this video for how to create IKs for the character. We created IKs for the leg, so that way if I move my torso, the legs will stay put, and I also have an IK spline for the antenna. The next video we'll come back and talk about how to create curve-based controls through constraints for the rest of the body.